In the middle of August 2022, Nancy Pelosi, the Congressional House leader, visited Taiwan in an attempt to show solidarity with Taiwanese leaders. Instead, the visit triggered a massive display of force from China's military. In an assertive and aggressive move, China conducted large-scale military exercises around the island, simulating an invasion, and even terminated military dialogues and cooperation channels with the US. Taiwan in turn faced a surge in cyber attacks, offering a glimpse of the catastrophic consequences of a potential conflict. Just looking at the data alone shows China's intention of intimidating Taiwan. What motivated Pelosi's visit? Some speculate that it was a calculated move to garner voter support in the upcoming midterm elections. Meanwhile, China's political leadership is still grappling with mounting concerns over Taiwan's future, as decades of diplomacy have failed to bring about a peaceful unification. With Taiwan drifting closer to independence, Chinese policymakers face mounting domestic pressure to take a firmer stance against the US, with critics even accusing the CCP of not doing enough to deter Taiwan's secessionist tendencies. As tensions continue to rise between the United States and China, it's important to ask why. What are the factors driving the relationship between these two global powers, and are power politics the only culprit? Akira Irie, a scholar in international relations, can help us shed some light on these questions. Irie posits that to understand why countries make the decisions they do, we must first understand their domestic context. As she explains in her essay, Culture and Power, International Relations as Intercultural Relations, nations are cultural systems, and international relations are a series of interactions amongst these systems. By examining Irie's work, we can gain a deeper understanding of how complex domestic factors shape the ongoing tensions between the US and China. Geopolitical events are only part of the equation. Culture also plays a significant role in shaping the relationship between these two nations. In this video essay, we'll define what culture is and explore two key core concepts in Chinese society, the loss of face and guanxi, that are key to understanding and maintaining relationship. These cultural concepts set the boundary for what is considered socially acceptable behavior and can help shed some understanding on why certain actions by one country can be seen as provocative or insulting to the other. Culture plays a role in shaping state action on the international stage. It provides a social structure of shared ideas and behaviors that set the boundary for acceptable behavior. However, it's important to know that culture alone cannot directly cause state action. There is no direct cause and effect relationship between culture and behavior. To truly understand the impact of culture, we must understand it in two ways: ideational and behavioral. According to the academic scholar Sapir, culture should be defined as a series of human activities and a configuration. He stresses that culture appears most visibly in a person's behavior. In other words, culture is not just a set of abstract ideas, but a set of behaviors that reflect those ideas. When it comes to the actions of countries on the international stage, it's important to understand that these actions are shaped by the ways different countries interact with each other. It's not simply enough to look at a country's actions in isolation. We need to consider the broader context of all the different factors that are at play in shaping international relations. When two states, let's call them state X and state Y, interact with each other, they often interpret each other's actions based on their own cultural beliefs and values. However, it may be considered normal or acceptable behavior in one country may be viewed as inappropriate or even offensive in another. This can lead to misunderstandings and conflict between the two states. To avoid this, State X needs to understand how its own cultural beliefs and values shape its perception of State Y's actions. For example, if State X consistently interprets State Y's actions as hostile, then State Y may start to view a State X as an enemy, even if that was not their intention. This perception of the other state as an enemy can have serious implications for foreign policies, as it's the basic direction for how each state interacts with the other. Therefore, it's important for leaders and policymakers to be aware of their own cultural biases and to work towards a better understanding of each other's cultural values in order to foster a more peaceful and productive relationship between states. In the Chinese language, there are two words associated with the concept of face, manji and lian. Both of these words reveal the significant value placed on prestige in Chinese society. Manji refers to the kind of fame that can be deliberately accumulated by a person through effort and achievement, with consequent pride during the course of his or her life. On the other hand, lian refers to the social respect offered by a group to an individual with high morality. Together, these two concepts set the standards for a socially acceptable behavior in Chinese culture. In Chinese culture, losing face means losing one's status and reputation. not only for the individual but for the entire community. This is in contrast to Western culture, which often places responsibility on the individual. These cultural behaviors and ideas influence state behavior, as seen in China's pride in its 5,000-year history and the nationalist narrative adopted by Xi Jinping. This narrative aims to cleanse China of national humiliation and prove its legitimacy by achieving a higher social and economic status than its predecessors. From a Chinese perspective, assertiveness in foreign policy is a need for respect. US foreign policy actions such as Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan have an impact on Chinese foreign policy actions and reactions, as they are seen as offensive behavior. America's alliance system in the East Asia-Pacific region is viewed by Chinese policymakers as impeding China's progress and treating them as an equal, leading to pressure for an aggressive foreign policy that demands respect. The situation in the South China Sea is similar, with Chinese foreign policy leaders and the wider public seeing any compromise as a loss of face as unacceptable. Guanxi is a unique social practice in Chinese culture that emphasizes trust, reciprocity, and equity. It is a long-term investment where both parties make short-term sacrifices to build mutual trust and equity. However, it is also an informal code that requires both parties to live up to each other's expectation. If one party fails to do so, the relationship may turn sour. Guanxi is not only restricted to the state level, but also can be seen on the international level. The relationship between China and the United States is a prime example of how Guanxi can influence state relationship. During the Cold War, the United States' anti-communist policies and its support for Taiwan strained its relationship with China. When the CCP took power in 1949, neither state established relations of amity. Nixon's tenure as president was a turning point in relations, however, with attempts to build goodwill and reset relations to establish a strong foundation. During the Indo-Pakistan conflict, the US cut off aid to India and provided intelligence to Chinese authorities on Indian troop deployments. The US also provided security guarantees in the event of the war with the Soviet Union, and provided statements about Taiwan being a core part of China, which gradually saw the withdrawal of troops from Taiwan. From China's perspective, these steps were in the right direction in improving relations and ending hostilities. However, this never established a Guanxi of amity. Guanxi as a social conduct is only viable when both parties have something to offer. The reality is that the US government had nothing it could offer its Chinese counterparts, and vice versa. The US administration following Nixon's resignation was not able to upend its pro-Taiwan policy. The 1978 Joint Communique only further deferred differences on the sale of weapons to Taiwan, and throughout the Reagan years these issues only further compounded. After the Tiananmen Square massacre of 1989, the relationship between China and the United States only further deteriorated. Cultural differences between the two states meant that each viewed each other's actions with hostile intent. China's cultural attitude towards the loss of face and the lack of Guanxi has a hidden potency. As Chinese leaders continue to see their rise, there is a greater incentive to insist on their rights and interests, not just with the US, but also with its neighbours. This, coupled with the lack of trust that each power has accrued for the other, makes any potential improvement in relations difficult. The relationship between the United States and China is unique and complex, and influenced by a variety of factors including culture. China's foreign policy actions are not solely aimed at supplanting the US as the sole superpower, but rather at playing a greater role in the current international system, while demanding respect for its cultural and societal boundaries. Both the US and China face domestic pressures that reward escalation rather than de-escalation. And by understanding a country's culture and societal norms, we can better understand its foreign policy actions. As Irie puts it, a country's foreign policy is an outward reflection of its domestic orientation. Unfortunately, culture is often overlooked as a factor in understanding state behavior. Through this video essay, I attempted to shed light on the role of culture in shaping both society and international relations.